Welcome to Turn Left Motorsports technical talk on removing a governor from a Predator 6.5 horsepower motor. Just what YouTube needs. Another video on how to remove the governor out of a Predator 6.5 horsepower engine. Well, this is how I think is the best way to do it. The best quality job for your time. Start off by removing the air box. Pretty straightforward. So yeah, if you're going to be running a aftermarket top plate with like a fuel pump, you want to get this out of here right now. If you're going to use a stock tank, stock throttle plate setup, which I do not suggest, you want to leave it on. But like I said, I suggest running a top plate. Get that tank out of there. There's a bolt on one side, pair of nuts on the other. Then you're going to have the gas line up underneath. Needing those pliers to pop that down and then just pull on it really hard. Now we're removing the governor arm, 10mm socket, pry that apart. Pops right off, unhook the springs and the throttle rod. Going to turn the motor on its side, 10mm socket, pop out all these bolts. Now when you get these bolts out, you're going to take your time pulling this cover off. You want to lift at the various points. Try not to pry at all, just lift. And bring it up evenly and try not to break that gasket. You don't want to replace it. Now it's also very important to open the engine up while it's on its side. If you do it on its side, it ensures that the camshaft is more likely to stay down in place. If the camshaft pulls out at all, the push rods will drop down and come off the rockers. Now this is the governor arm right here. We're cutting off as much as we can, which is about 3/8 of an inch or so. That will allow us to push it through. If you don't cut it off, it's really hard to get past the crank. Now it's handy to have a magnet around for these next steps. There's a washer right there that I forgot for about a minute, but I got it later in the video. Just want to remind you now. Pulling off a little cap there, a little plastic cap. There's a washer between that and that wheel. It came off with the cap because it has grease on it. Now there's this retaining clip here. I bang it out with a flathead screwdriver trying to deform the shape of it. As you can see right there. There's probably a better way of doing this, but that's what I do. It allows you to pull the gear right out. Just make sure the crank's not in the way of that. There's a washer down there, and I'm getting the washer I missed earlier. Now you can turn the engine over to get the crank out of the way for you. Slowly with the pull start, just want to be careful. Here we're cutting out the wires for the low oil sensor. A lot of people pull out all the wiring and then plug the hole. I'm really lazy about it, so I just cut the wires, pull the bolts, and pull the sensor. In the next task, we gotta plug the hole at the top of the crankcase where the governor pivot arm was. I am going to do this by drilling the hole out and then tapping it with a 1/8 inch National Pipe thread tap. That way I can put a brass fitting in there with a 1/4 inch barb, which you can get like at Ace or most any hardware store. I use this to run my fuel pump. The crankcase pressure works good on creating the pulse. A lot of people also run it off the valve cover, which is perfectly fine. If you're not running a fuel pump or you're running it off your valve cover, you just need to plug this hole simply. I suggest tapping it with a 1/4-20 tap and putting a bolt with Loctite in there. If you're new to running taps, you want to keep the threads lubricated and start with doing one turn in and a half turn out. One turn in, half turn out. Yeah, so we're just trying to plug this hole somehow, and I just find it handy to use it for my fuel pump. So obviously it's very important not to leave any metal shavings in the engine behind. So I've been using the vacuum here and there. And then when I went to tap this hole, I put grease on the threads. That'll pick up all the metal shavings from the tap. Hit it with the vacuum again just to be safe. There's the hose barb. Now you see I got a straight one. I run the little half top plates, the skinnier ones. So the straight one's no big deal. But if you're running a full top plate or you want a cleaner look, you can get a barb, but that's a 90 degree. This is a 1/4 inch barb, a 1/8 NPT thread. Time to put the cover back on. Do a look over before you do this. Make sure there's no debris left behind or any parts. Make sure you got all those washers. And yeah, throw that cover back on. I just hit it with the impact all the way around. Um, there is a torque spec for this. So if you're feeling ambitious, use a torque wrench, torque them down. All right, just throw your carburetor assembly back together, get the airbox back on there, and make sure you get that little hose that goes to the valve cover on one before you tighten it all down. So if you're running a aftermarket top plate with a fuel pump assembly and all that good stuff, you're all set here. But if you're going to be running the stock top plate, I urge you not to, but I'm going to try to help you out the best I can. So that nut right there, the hinge point for that lever, you want to loosen it up until you feel that arm actually moving free. Now we're going to take the stock throttle rod and we're going to mark it out to that hole on the lever arm because we're going to have to put some 90-degree bends in there. So we're marking our measurement right there. Take it off the carburetor, couple pliers. Now you want to make these 90-degree bends as crisp as you can. I am not taking my time here because I'm not going to be using this piece. So take your time, make these bends crisp. Once you get that second bend done, take some side cutters, make a cut or two, and then you'll be able to fatigue brake the rest of that throttle rod off. You're going to take the newly bent side and work it through the throttle arm. Then you're going to take the original side and put it back into the carburetor. Push it down firmly. Make sure it's all the way down. Push the carb back. Actuate the throttle arm. Make sure you're getting full throttle. You can take the stock spring that came with the assembly, hook it up over there, and pull back one of the nuts on the exhaust headers and then tighten it down over that. You can see it works pretty well, but get a second spring on there somewhere, whether it's doubled up in the same spot or another angle. If you have any suggestions or questions, please feel free to put them in the comments below. Thank you for watching.